From the book of Acts, chapter 27, What a Shipwreck. Here you can see Paul and some of his friends being put into a boat. They're being held prisoner, and you can see the soldiers that are with them, taking them off to another island. Men, I can see that our voyage is going to be disastrous and bring great loss to ship and cargo and to our own lives also. But the centurion, one of the soldiers, instead of listening to what Paul said, followed the advice of the pilot and of the owner of the ship. Since the harbor was unstable to winter, the majority decided that they would set sail, hoping to reach Phoenix and stay there for the winter. This harbor was currently in Crete. Now wind, the force of a hurricane, called a nor'easter, swept down from the island. The ship was caught by the storm and could not head into the wind, so they gave way to it and were driven along. As we passed to the lee of a small island called Cauda, we were hardly able to make the lifeboat secure, Paul said. So the men hoisted it aboard. Then they passed the ropes under the ship itself to hold it together because they were afraid they would run aground on the sandbars of Syrtis. They lowered the sea anchor and let the ship be driven along. We took such a violent battering from the storm that the next day they began to throw the cargo overboard. On the third day they threw the ship's tackle overboard, and with their own hands neither sun nor stars appeared for many days, and the storm continued raging. We finally gave up all hope of being saved. After they had gone a long time without food, Paul stood up before them and said, "Men, you should have taken my advice not to sail from Crete. Then you would have spared yourselves this damage and loss. Now I urge you to keep up your courage, because not one of you will be lost. Only the ship will be destroyed. Last night an angel of God, to whom I belong and whom I serve, stood beside me and said, 'Do not be afraid, Paul. You must stand trial before Caesar. And God has graciously given you the lives of all who sail with you. So keep up your courage, men, for I have faith to God that it will happen just as he told me. Nevertheless, we must run aground on some island.' On the 14th night, we were still being driven along across the Adriatic Sea, when about midnight the sailors sensed that they were approaching land. They took soundings and found that the water was 120 feet deep. A short time later, they took soundings again and found it was 90 feet deep. Fearing that we would be dashed against the rocks, they dropped four anchors from the stern and prayed for daylight. In an attempt to escape from the ship, the sailors let the lifeboat down into the sea, pretending they were going to lower some anchor from the bow. Then Paul said to the centurion, "Unless these men stay with the ship, you cannot be saved." So the soldiers cut the rope that held the lifeboats and let it drift away. Just before dawn, Paul urged them all to eat. "For the last 14 days, he said, you have been in constant suspense and have gone without food. You haven't eaten anything. Now I urge you to take some food. You need it to survive. Not one of you will lose a single hair from his head." After he said this, he took some bread and gave thanks to God in front of them all. Then he broke it and began to eat. They were all encouraged and ate some food themselves. Altogether, there were 276 of us on board. When daylight came, they didn't recognize the land. So the soldiers stood up, and they threatened to kill the other prisoners because they were afraid they're going to run off. But the centurion wanted to spare Paul's life and kept them from carrying out their plans. He ordered those who could swim to jump overboard first and get to land. The rest were to get there on the planks or on other pieces of the ship. In this way, everyone reached land safety, even those who swam off of the ship after being threatened by the soldier. They were safe. Have a good day. God bless.